You're listening to the Real Elevation podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hendricks, and here we discuss topics on personal fitness, well-being, and elevation of mind and body. Join us as we help build and grow a community of real, elevated men and women. If you're currently feeling frustrated, flat, and fed up with life, or want to be a physically and mentally elevated individual, you're invited to join us each and every week here on the Real Elevation podcast. Welcome to the RE family and get ready to elevate your mind and body. Welcome back to the Real Elevation podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hendricks, and today we have another outstanding, informative, and elevating show for you. I'd like to welcome all first-time listeners to the podcast and be sure to stay to the end of the show where I'll be sharing all my social media links where you can connect with me as we continue to grow the Real Elevation podcast community. I'm excited to take you behind the scenes today and share a little bit more about myself. Yes, you've been listening to me for a while, but I'm sure there are some questions that you may have about myself. So this episode is called Mike's Message, my journey so far, and I'm breaking it down into two parts. This is my journey about what you have maybe known about me already, but also what you may not know about me as I continue on this thing called the human experience. In this first episode, I'll take you through my journey through a young age, starting about me from when I was in maybe primary school or high school through to my 30s, explaining on how fitness became such an integral and essential part of who I am today. And maybe next time we'll speak about things from my 30s onwards until the present day. We'll dive in how I use these many life lessons, as I'm sure we all have, to build up my understanding and to build my system and my programs that I share with many of the people that I speak with and I work with today that help them to transform those lives. But before we get into it, let me just share this quick question with you. Are you tired of feeling stuck, struggling with unwanted belly fat, or unsure of where to start on your fitness and well-being journey? If that's the case, I want you to check out my Real Rejuvenation program. It's a program designed for busy men and women over the age of 45 who want to reclaim their fitness and their health without spending long hours in the gym, so they can profit and produce daily at their best. It's helped many people, and you can be the next one. I'll leave a link in the show notes where you can apply. We can speak about you, where you are right now, and ultimately where you want to get to. I'll leave a link in the show notes for you. Okay, so let's dive in. We're speaking today about Mike's Message, my journey so far. Now, I'm not just sharing this story to talk about myself, which, by the way, I'm not very good at doing, that is talking about myself. But I want you to see, basically, that I wasn't always where I am now. Like many people, been through struggles, feeling out of shape, feeling lost, lacking confidence, and battling through the noise of conflicting advice and what's right and what's wrong. But this is hopefully me sharing my journey with you is proof that no matter where you are, what you're dealing with right now, real change, real lasting change is possible. So let's dive in. So born in 1974, that's my birth year, to Jamaican parents. My mum's called Esmond. My father is called Earl, and both of them devout Christians, and that's where the early part of my life really focused. It was all about church and the church community. My parents were devout Christians, and it was the church that raised me and my two brothers. I am the middle of three boys, by the way. Yeah. So it was all about church twice a day, every Sunday, religiously. And that helped create some great friendships, some of which I have now, and formed the foundation of a lot of principles, as you can imagine, being in the church. But fast forward to middle school, I was just the average tall, skinny kid who really didn't stand out aesthetically. I wasn't the coolest, I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't with the in crowd. I wasn't the most confident, if you like. And I remember that inner desire to, like many kids, you just want to fit in, yeah? But as you can maybe appreciate, being one of only a few black children in a predominantly white school brought its many different challenges. Some things weren't easy at that stage of my life. I felt invisible, felt a bit of an outsider. And that was the feeling that I had to deal with for a long period of time. The church was quite the opposite. So going to church is predominantly a black church, people with similar backgrounds, similar heritage, African, West Indian, Caribbean. So that was great. But school, 5 days a week, was, quite the opposite. And it wasn't until I started playing football, which I was good at, I quickly recognised that being good at something brings its benefits. And I strongly believe, looking back into my journey of health and fitness, me starting off on this football journey, subconsciously this affected me, which was a good way, because I said learning to be good at something carried through into high school. Now we fast forward into high school, I started delving into other sports. So I discovered that football was great because it helped you to be popular. You were always the first person to be picked on the team, and it gave me a sense of inclusion and sense of being wanted. I started to take that into other sports. So playing rugby, playing basketball, all things that I tried out once I got into high school. Wasn't hugely successful or great at rugby, but basketball, because of my height, obviously that was a clear advantage. That's something that I excelled in. And I I understood at that point that sport and physical activity was definitely my thing. That gave me a real sense of control. I realized that, consistent effort, working physically, testing your body, would lead to a real sense of achievement. And, at school we won different tournaments, competitions, and that was all through learning of sport, learning about how playing together as a team, whether it was football or basketball, it was something that you could achieve, give you a sense of development, growth, and achievement. Now, it was football that was my first love. I really liked football, and it is still something that I, and all those that play now, it's something that I really love doing. And I was getting recognised for my efforts, especially back in school. So going 14, 15, 16, people were not talking as, this is going to be the next super player like Maradona or Pele or anything like that. But it brought opportunities in the way of some local trials for local football clubs. But unfortunately, going back, again, not blaming, but this was a fact. I didn't have that same support that you need when you're looking to pursue a particular interest, and I didn't have that support at home. My dad wasn't really happy that I wasn't prioritising church, and I was prioritising football over church. And as a result, me attending these trials, nothing really paid off. Nothing really transpired into me being offered a scholarship or anything like that. Now, once I left school, didn't do particularly brilliantly at school, got, I think, 1 or 2 GCSEs above the grade C, but nothing outstanding. I went into college, and this was a real pivotal point for myself in terms of my development, my growing up, yeah. Could say it was a game changer, but not in a good sense. So I started learning, obviously got into course which was sport orientated, sports science studies it was, but I got mixed up in a certain crowd when it became apparent that my desire to pursue professionalism in football or develop myself further going down that football road wasn't an opportunity that I could explore further. I kind of got mixed up with the wrong crowd, which ultimately led me to being kicked out of home, because my dad, he wasn't a man who's going to mince his words. He would basically tell you how it is. And because I got mixed up in the wrong crowd, because I wasn't doing the things that he thought were aligned with his values and his principles, he gave me an ultimatum and I had to leave. He was old school in that sense, and I wasn't behaving in a way, looking back, that was in line with his Christian values, so he drop-kicked me out. At the time, it was a harsh lesson, and you might think it was a harsh lesson for a young lad of 17, 18 to be kicked out, but it quickly made me grow up and learn to stand on my own 2 feet. And, even though after that did kick me out, I had to go live in a youth hostel for a while. As I said, it really accelerated my growth and my ability to be independent. But after a while, excuse me, I got my own place. I was living in my own little 1-bedroom flat. So going into my 20s now, so going through those years, 18, 19, even though I was at college, so I'd gone into my 3rd year at college now, doing a second program of study. I wasn't involved in any sport at any stage at this point, and the crowd that I was keeping didn't help. They weren't sport or fitness or health orientated, as you might be able to imagine, and I got mixed up in drugs and doing all sorts of things that weren't really in line with my original values and principles. That was, investing in doing something constructive. This became a new pastime, unfortunately, messing around with recreational drugs, and unfortunately, one thing led to another, and it became a spiral downhill. I'll be honest with you, I made some great friends, and I still know 1 or 2 of those people, even though we're a lot older now, from that circle today. Obviously, we've changed a lot, but it wasn't a constructive use of time, I wasn't being productive or constructive in any shape, way or form. That was until I met my first love, who helped me through this difficult time. At the time, looking back, it was a true godsend, because who knows where I'd be now if I didn't have met her. It was a great opportunity for me to cut my ties with those people, with that mixed circle of friends who were just interested in just smoking, drinking, getting high, doing all that sort of thing. And as a result, we spent 7-8 years together. And after she came back from travelling, because she went travelling for a period of time, we had my first and eldest son, Reuben, which was all good. We got a house and moved in together. However, it wasn't all happy ever after Reuben came along, because less than, I think it was 18 months after he came along, we broke up. And again, it was a difficult and trying time. I wasn't doing anything to improve myself, develop myself. I was just very much in a space where, if you could almost say, like drifting along. And you could tell, didn't really have any focus, wasn't really working on myself. Even though at the time I was working in the fitness and health space, I wasn't really working on myself. I was being quite selfish, no real clarity on what I wanted to achieve in the short term or the long term. And that behavior only contributed negatively to the situation, as you can probably imagine. I didn't really understand what it was like to have that clarity and take personal responsibility and understand the concept of you create your own reality. Like most people, I would blame and point the finger and say it was someone else's fault. And this behavior, if I'm being honest, that continued for the next 4 years or so. Playing around, drifting without any real direction, having air quotes fun and being carefree without really any focus. And this led to my second son being born, which wasn't planned at all. And if I'm being honest, I was in denial of this for a period of time. But it was at the age around about 35, a huge life-changing event made me see the error of my ways, if you like, and change the direction of my life forever. And I'm going to share that with you in part 2 of Mike's message, My Journey So Far. So you can see that first part of my journey was from the skinny, tall kid trying to fit in to the father of 2 boys, faltering through life. But you know what? It was all good. I'm going to say that it was all good because it's all part of my story, which I'm sharing with you now. all part of my development. And I'm going to share with you in part 2 everything that I took from those early years and help me to become the person that I am today. And yeah, I can look back and say, well, that wasn't great, but it's all part of my journey, all part of what makes Mike Hendricks who he is today. So I'm confident that you found that interesting. You've learned a little bit more about myself and my background, my family, who I am. And as I said, in part 2, when you tune back in, I'm going to share with you some more insights on what has made Mike who he is today and why I am the person that I am becoming, because I'm not become, I'm always evolving, I'm always changing, I'm always learning. You'll see that that's something I really have grown to learn to love to do, is learn, evolve and develop and create new levels of understanding and understanding myself better, seeking that Christ consciousness, that highest frequency of understanding that we are, in my opinion, put on this earth to do. But I'm going to share that with you in part 2. All right, so I trust you found it insightful. Remember, if you have, I appreciate it if you share this with your connections or your circle of influence. If you've not done so already, leave us a 5-star review, because the more reviews we get, the more people hear about the Real Elevation podcast, and we can share our message of finding freedom through fitness. All right, until next time, remember, be well, be wise, be cool, be calm, and keep it real. Blessings and chi. Peace.